Depends on the words because you end up going click, 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 click. Oh, hey, welcome. This is our 12th episode. This is live at Epiphan. It's Thursday at 3, and we have a good show today. I'm George.
I'm Dan.
Today's topic is the truth about ISO. And I'm a photographer. I've been taking video and photographs forever. And you showed me some stuff this week that kind of blew my mind and made me understand things about my camera. I didn't know that. So we're going to get to this big reveal later in the episode. While we're going here, send us your comments, chat in Facebook or YouTube. You know, we get all the feedback, ask us questions. So let us know. What are we going to do today?
All right, so today's topic is the truth about ISO. So let's start things off. I mean, ISO is a camera term that many people are probably familiar with. But George, let me ask you, do you know what ISO is? What does it stand for?
I don't know. I know how to use it and how to manipulate it when I take photographs, but I don't actually know what's happening. I think of it as I get a lot of grain if I have a high ISO, and I have very little grain if I have very low ISO. That's kind of how I use it.
Sure, and that's a fairly common perception of what ISO is, and it's certainly not wrong. But why don't we start with the basics? So ISO actually stands for International Standards Organization, believe it or not.
Seriously?
Pretty.
That's the lamest acronym.
It is a lame acronym, but it is actually a standard, which is the standard measure of sensitivity to light.
Yes, okay.
So when you're adjusting the ISO on your camera or video camera, you're actually changing the sensitivity of your camera's sensor to the light that it is seeing on the sensor itself. So if we think back in the days of shooting on film, you would actually purchase a film with the ISO that you want. So you could purchase a
400 or 100
or maybe an ISO 800. So in difficult, darker lighting situations, you might actually choose a higher ISO sensitivity because that will allow your camera to see in less light.
Yes. At the cost of noise.
At the cost of, yes, digital grain.
Right.
So, the common perception is that, the higher the ISO you select with your digital camera, the more grain you're going to introduce, film grain or digital noise you're going to introduce into your image. And actually, I have a little demonstration here that I can show you. So I'll pull this up really quick. This is actually something that we shot earlier today. We're a little cameo appearance from Matthew in the studio. And you can see something's not quite right with this image. And that's because we cranked the ISO on our C100 to the highest possible setting, which I think was something like ISO, it was like ISO 102,000.
Yeah. So, but surprisingly, it's not as bad as I would have thought, to be honest with you.
No, really. I mean, it's a testament to the quality of the C100 that at ISO over 100,000 ISO that, it's not completely garbage, but for most people's purposes, this would not be acceptable for quality video. And most of the time you're going to run into digital noise in your image. It's going to be because perhaps you're shooting in a darker scenario and your camera's automatic settings kick the ISO up.
If you shoot at auto, right? Okay.
Exactly. So what I would encourage people to do is actually maybe try flipping your camera, take the dive, flip your camera over to manual settings.
Yes.
And the first setting you should probably play with is the ISO setting. So when you're outside in daylight or sun and you have lots of light, typically we would recommend that a low ISO is going to be best.
Like 100.
Yeah, exactly. Some cameras have ISO 50, but most start at ISO 100. And then each level of ISO represents an increase in the sensitivity. So ISO 200 would be double the sensitivity to ISO 100 and so on. But it's actually not that simple. We're going to try to talk about how to actually select the right ISO for your camera.
Which is not as obvious as I thought it was obvious.
I thought it was obvious too.
Low to high, linear scale.
Exactly. For a long time I thought, if I go from ISO 320 to ISO 640, I'm going to get more light sensitivity, but I'm going to be introducing more grain. And the higher I go, the more grain I'm going to introduce.
And we care about grain because we have a lot of customers who are using video equipment and they're trying to stream to a place like Facebook or YouTube, or they're there's a bunch of processes involved in what they're trying to do. So they might have a webcaster set up and they're streaming to Facebook. And along the way, they're going to get encoding and transcoding, and all of that is going to affect their image quality.
Right. And especially with live streaming. And the reason for that is that the grain in an image, when it comes to image encoding, grain is your enemy because it affects the digital noise.
Yes, right, okay.
And when it comes to encoding an image, having lots of moving pixels, it puts a lot of strain on the encoder.
So you get a lower quality video
Exactly.
because of that.
Exactly.
Okay.
So especially with live streaming, it's important to select the right ISO for your camera so you're getting the cleanest image possible with the least amount of digital noise.
Yes. That's one of the reasons why we shoot with a plain background here too, is because it's less digital noise around here with this nearly flat color. It means we get a better outcome on Facebook and YouTube where it's not going to be compressed as much.
Exactly. Earlier this week, did a little test because we wanted to test out some different camera ISOs. So went and grabbed the trusty Canon 5D and shot a few different video clips just with the lens cap on. So I just shot, dark footage with the lens cap on at each increment of ISO.
Okay, cool.
So I'm going to open up that test and we'll take a look here. Close VLC here. Okay. I'll full screen this so we can see it. So we'll take a look here. So each of these is the exact same shot.
Yes.
But different ISOs.
So the green fuzziness that I'm looking at is your digital noise.
Exactly. So what I've done is I've cranked up the exposure in post.
Yeah.
And when you do that, it starts to reveal all of the digital noise that's happening in the image.
Yes.
Okay? So we can see with each of these ISOs which ones introduce more noise than others.
So this is the part that blew my mind because, like I said, I always assumed less was better, more was worse. But clearly on this scale, there's sweet spots and there's miserable spots. Like I wouldn't have thought 250 would be, for whatever reason, a poorer ISO choice over 640. But it's way worse.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a function of the way that the sensor in this particular camera works. Now,
so every camera is going to have a different grid, basically. If you were to film this in every camera, you get different results.
Exactly. So why don't I pull up another camera here? So we've got actually our studio camera, the C100, and let's take a look at its noise output at different ISO levels.
So this is the camera that we're filming with right now.
Exactly. Now this is a much more linear scale, but there are some important differences. So, if we're going to take any information out of this test, I would say that it shows us that you kind of want to be at ISO 1250 or less, if possible, first of all.
So it gives you a threshold to do not cross this line unless you have to.
Exactly. Once you go higher than 1250, you're starting to introduce significantly more digital noise into your image. Now, if we want to take a closer comparison to, say, ISO 2500 and ISO 1600, I've got a comparison that I'll pull up here. 1 second. Now, this is not a huge difference, but it's interesting in that you can actually see that ISO 2500 maybe performs a little bit better than ISO 1600 does.
Yeah, enough so that you would have that. If you knew this, you would always shoot 2500 instead of 1600.
Exactly. Let me show you with the 5D actually a comparison that I think is a much more significant. So look at this.
Holy cow.
That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
So ISO 250 actually has a tremendously...
Do they publish this information at all, the camera manufacturers? Because they should. It would be so helpful for everybody knowing that they could say, this ISO, we worked our best, but it's not great.
Yeah.
This one, we nailed it.
I mean, it would be great if your camera came with a manual with recommended ISOs, but that's not the case. The ISO performance of cameras it's kind of like the secret sauce that camera manufacturers don't necessarily tell you a lot about how it works.
Yeah, this is really
but
interesting.
if you do some research online, or if you do this test yourself, it's actually pretty easy to do.
Do people publish these tests? Like, did you find that when you were looking for it? Are there other people filming with their lens cap on?
I had always been told that when I'm shooting with my 5D that ISO 320, 640, the multiples of those ISOs.
There was folklore.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of common knowledge if you shoot with that camera a lot and you've researched it that certain ISOs, and I'll pull it up again, that certain ISOs perform better than others. But especially with this camera, you see there's really a dramatic difference. So like, if I had to choose between ISO 1250 and ISO 500, I should choose ISO 1250 every time, right?
Yeah.
And then you maybe use ND to stop down my image or close my
Sure,
aperture.
sure. Right.
You know, there's a lot of different ways to get the exposure you want. But if you have to choose an ISO, it's good to know which one to choose. So do some research online.
Yeah, it makes me want to put a little cheat sheet on the back of my camera.
Absolutely.
Like, actually, on the C100, there are presets on it, so you could set the presets to whatever optimal ISOs for your camera.
Exactly. So do a little research. Most cameras have what is known as a native ISO, which is the ISO that is published as being exactly.
Okay.
And the native ISO is not only based on the digital noise, it's also based on the dynamic range. So the performance of the camera overall might be better at some ISOs than others. So do your research.
That's awesome.
Do some tests and see what you can learn about your camera, and then, you know, use the best ISO you can, because especially with live streaming, less digital noise is going to drastically improve the performance of your encoding as well.
That's awesome. Cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Well, thanks a lot. So this is not a long topic today. There's not a whole lot more to say about it. So if you want to see us and ask more questions about it, we're going to be at Infocom, which is in Florida, booth 2050. That's next week, June 14th. We're going to have our Webcaster X2 there, which I know a lot of people are excited about. It's if you want to try it out and see it in action, it's going to be there. We're going to be doing some live streaming from there as well throughout the week. So look for us on YouTube, look for us on Facebook. Send us any comments you have about the show and things you want to see us talk about, and we'll get to that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're always looking for what you, the audience, wants to learn in this show. So send us your suggestions. Email us, live@epiphan.com, or you can connect with us on Facebook, on YouTube, like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And make sure to tune in, as always, Thursday afternoons at 3 p.m. here live in the Epiphan studio.
We have a Chroma Key show next week.
That's right. Next week we're going to be talking about some new functionality that is going to be coming to...
It's a rumor.
Can I say this? Can I say this?
Actually, you can say it, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to be having some new functionality coming to Pearl 2, which is the Chroma Key. So for all you green screen fanatics out there, very exciting. And there's a lot of things you can do with a green screen or with chroma keying other than just screen
Brick
replace.
walls.
Yeah, exactly.
Blue skies. Yeah.
Old school music videos.
Yeah.
So make sure to tune in next week, and we'll have some more information about that. And we'll look forward to seeing you then. Until next week, I'm Dan.
And I'm George. See you again.
So long.